A Formula One pit stop can take less than 2 seconds. In less time than it takes you to blink twice, the car gets lifted, the tires get changed, the wing gets adjusted, and the car is back on the go. It's not just fast mechanics, it's choreographed, rehearsed, a high-stakes operation with specialized roles where every single person, if they are not completely zoned in on their role, if they're late by just 1/10 of a second, the whole thing can collapse. Today, we're going to be going inside the pit box. Who does what the pit wall is looking at, why teams can't just decide to pit whenever they want, how the rules shape the pit stop, and why the fastest pit stops are not just about talent. They're about systems, training, and of course, money. By the end of the episode, you're going to see pit stops very differently, not as a blur, but as a sequence that you can actually read. We're breaking it down roll by roll, and then zooming out to talk about strategy, data, safety, rules, and what separates a clean pit stop from chaos. Hi, welcome back to the Great Girls Formula, your F1 podcast where we talk about what makes Formula One so interesting, from the technical decisions and strategy to the people, decisions, and stories behind the races. I'm your host, Zoe, and if you want to see even more Formula One content like this, then make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this on, and follow us on Instagram at Great Girls Formula. Let's talk about pit stops. So as I said, pit stops are a lot more than just what they look like. A lot of people will say that you won't actually see the perfect pit stop, but you can always hear the perfect pit stop. You could hear the whir of the guns as they pull off the tires and then as they go back on, and it should all be a very sweet symphony. And just like a symphony, it takes a lot of practice, preparation, everybody to know their melody, and then to be able to set up and perform under pressure. And there's a lot of people involved in that one singular couple of seconds. We have the pit wall who makes the call, who directs the pit crew. You have various roles in the actual people performing the pit stop, from the front jack, the rear jack, corners, wing adjustments, stabilizers. There's different systems involved. There's a traffic light system, confirmations, positioning systems to get everybody set up where they need to be. And of course, there are constraints. There are safety rules to make sure that everybody gets through this pit stop without any kind of harm. There's pit lane speed, there's unsafe release penalties. And then of course, you just have the general things that go into it of all of the practice, understanding the fatigue, the rotation, cost cap trade-offs. There's a lot of thought that goes into every single one of these pit stops that we see. Next time that you watch a race and you are seeing this pit stop, try to count all of the different people that are just hanging out there, knowing exactly what their job is and working on the car in those 2 seconds flat. We probably have all heard a lot of talk about pit stop strategy and decisions, plan A, plan B, people coming over on the radio, trying to understand with the pit wall and the driver, deciding when they're going to come in and pit, because they have to commit together, right? The crew has to be ready, and it does take some time for them to go into action. Drivers can request a stop if the grip is gone or the tires feel dumb, but they can't really just drive in at the last second. The pit wall has to call out which car is going to be coming into the pits, what tire that they're going to be going to, and what the front wing adjustment is going to be. Ideally, the crew will be out and ready roughly 15 to 20 seconds before the car arrives. They need some time to check out their tools, both the primary ones and the spare ones, and they're all already lined up in a very particular order when they're sat in the garage so that they can run out in the most organized fashion possible. And really, it's like preparing for a whole launch. There's a countdown to everything, and everybody has to be on the same beat. So the operations are typically run by the pit wall. There will be a sporting director or manager type role, and they are going to be the ones coordinating with the race engineers to figure out what the strategy is that they should be playing. They will also be the ones figuring out the best timing windows, so thinking about when to come in traffic-wise, where they can kind of maximize the most speed, if there's opportunity for an undercut or an overcut, how to handle if a safety car comes out, for example. They are also the ones who have to help the crew get ready over the course of the season. And there's a lot of different ways that they go about doing this. There's going to be a lot of telemetry and data streams that they are evaluating throughout the race. And it's really a very real-time decision environment. They can't plan these things. It really has to be made in the moment based off of the information that they have and the different race conditions that they are experiencing. They can prepare all that they want, but that's why they have so many plan A, plan B, plan C, because it really depends on what's going on. And like with anything, there is going to be a trade-off. So a fast pit stop is going to be useless if it is unsafe and penalized, or if it's too precise and too slow, then that's not going to do them any good either. And it's up to the people on the pit wall to make sure that they strike this perfect balance. One of the biggest principles that you will see in Formula One is that everybody has one specific job. Nobody should be doing too much. There's only so much you can do in 2 seconds, so you really want to make sure that they are grounded in their one role. This minimizes the mental load of the individuals working. It also speeds up repetitive learning so that they can have this choreographed perfectly. It also reduces the risk of error if they only need to handle one very particular task. So let's meet the cast. Starting with the front jack. So this is going to be the individual. When the car comes in, they're going to catch the car on the very front jack and lift up the car with all of their strength. They actually have to have a really good fast twitch muscle response. Basically explosive power, strength, and speed. They have to react really, really quickly. And they have to also be ready for a car to come barreling at them and for them to just not jump out of the way. As soon as the car's nose cone hits the jack point, it absorbs the momentum, and that helps them to be able to lift the car. Once the car is up, you'll often see them kind of move over to the side so that they can easily let go and have a safe path to release. There's actually a quick release button on the jack itself that drops the car easily. And the moment that they hit release though, they do still have to move the rest of the jack equipment out of the way so that the car can easily go. There's really zero time for hesitation in this role. They have to be really, really able to react extremely quickly. Which, to be honest, is kind of the case for everybody, but I would say it is particularly important for the front jack as the first touch point on the car. The rear jack is going to start a little bit after the front jack. This is basically just because the car has to pass them first. It's really important for the rear jack to be able to kind of cup onto the car on the first attempt. They can't be trying to find the right point that they need to hook onto in order to lift the car up. It is also quite difficult because there isn't a lot of mechanical leverage for these cars because they sit so low to the ground. So definitely need a lot of strength and precision under pressure for this role. Then we have the 4 corners of the car, and there are a few different roles for each of the corners. So here is the biggest concept though, is that it is very important that the wheel change needs balance. So both sides need to be working at the same speed and the same rhythm. If one side is quicker, then it can throw off the timing of the whole thing because the car is going to be moving around and affected by that timing difference. So at each corner, you're going to have the wheel gunner who is responsible for plugging into the wheel nut and using the gun to detach it. There's going to be a tire carrier who pulls the tire off, and then there's going to be somebody else who puts the tire on. You're also going to have backups for these positions as well. The backups can kind of vary depending on team though. And even just between the front and the rear of the car, there are going to be some differences. So the rear wheels are a little bit heavier, larger. You're going to need more leverage and strength needed. They also have recessed wheel nuts. So it's like a dish and it's kind of deeper in there. So the rear has to wait until the car has come fully to a stop, whereas the front wheels are able to start moving into their position as the car is still slowing down. So they have a little bit more aggressive timing in that regard. The wheel off person also is going to have grabbed that tire as soon as they possibly can, sometimes before the car is even fully off the ground. So I actually find the wheel guns to be super interesting because they are such a cool piece of technology to be able to allow us to do these pit stops in such a quick amount of time. So the gunner is going to keep the gun on the wheel until the wheel clears the axle. It uses spring-loaded retaining clips to hold the wheel on, and the guns will automatically reverse direction whenever they stop it. So they are able to just go right back in there and re-engage to capture the nut on the new tire. And then there is also a confirmation light or button on the gun themselves. So once they have confirmed that the wheel is in fact on there correctly, they have to hit that in order to alert whoever it is that's deciding when it is time to let the car go. They have to give them that notification. It's very important that the person wielding the tire gun is able to stay extremely calm under pressure, because we've seen it before. Sometimes they don't work perfectly. If the car is in a little bit of the wrong position, then they have to adjust for that. They have to be able to handle if something does go wrong and the wheel gun doesn't work, and they need to kind of, handle that in the moment in as quick a way as possible. Next, we have the person responsible for adjusting the front wing. So wing adjustments will happen whenever the tire changes, because that alters the grip balance. We actually kind of heard a little bit more about this other week when Lewis Hamilton had that whole incident where his front wing adjustment guy unfortunately got a little bit run over. Nothing obviously too serious, he was fine, but he wasn't able to adjust the front wing, and this affected Lewis Hamilton's rest of the race because he needed that adjustment to adjust the downforce to account for the different type of grip of the tires. And those very minimal wing tweaks help to prevent oversteer and understeer surprises and just maximize the effect of the tires. In order for them to prepare, they will preset torque drivers to kind of have that up and down adjustment. And it's really only small changes. Like, it's not anything crazy, but it is enough to make a difference. There are also some more kind of supplemental jobs. So there can be stabilizers who help to hold the car steady. They may also help to wipe the driver's visor if needed, assist with a steering wheel swap if that's happening, and clear any debris that may be caught in the suspension or anything like that. There may also be people who are responsible for side jacks, so particularly if there is going to be a nose change or puncture complications, they can't lift up the car from the front, so they'll have to do it from the side, and that will change the whole choreography. So as I mentioned, the gunners all have to basically press a confirmation button to confirm that it is time to go. And it is very important that somebody has to make that final call as to whether it is the right time to let the car go. We often hear about unsafe releases, which can cause a penalty. There used to be a lollipop man back in the day where they literally would just hold the sign down to say no and then lift it up when it was time to go, but we use a traffic light system now. The chief mechanic is going to be the one to make that decision. It is a human decision point at the end of the day. They have to make sure that everything has gone to plan, that everything is safe, and they're checking those confirmation lights from the gunners. They want to make sure that we got all of the correct torque confirmations when it comes to those front wing adjustments, or if they're changing the nose cone. And then just a visual confirmation that the car is complete and that it is safe to leave the box. So that's going to involve looking down the pit lane. There's usually like a marker that they'll use to know that if like another car is coming into the pits and it's past that marker, they can't let the car go. But it is a split-second decision, and it is a human decision. We get that unsafe release because it is just in the moment and it's so quick that it can be very hard to call it if somebody is coming in the pit lane. But unfortunately, they are punished with either 5 or 10-second penalty, or sometimes even a drive-through penalty if it is really bad, if it's very much unsafe. So teams will do their best to make sure that this is correct, but not always perfect. So we've talked before about just how important pit stops are to the overall race strategy. I had like a whole video basically kind of deep diving a little bit more into that. So if you want to check out that podcast, I will make sure to link it. But the pit stop is all part of the overall chess match that is Formula One. So time gained isn't just service time. I mean, it's part of your lap. It's the in lap, the stop, the out lap. All of those come together to factor into into how the race will progress. And of course, we have all heard the terms undercut and overcut. So an undercut basically means that you will pit before your rival. So you are hoping that your fresher tire than theirs will give you the advantage and make you quicker and allow you to overtake them. The overcut means that you will pit after your rival, and your hope is that by staying out longer, you will be in cleaner air, and that'll make you go quicker so that whenever you do pit, you come out in front of your rival. Something else to consider is also just the layout of the pit lane itself. So teams have assigned pit lane spots, and each one kind of has pros and cons, so I will say they all kind of even out more or less. Champions are usually near the front. That just means that there's less swerving to get into the box. The effect is also that there is less time to react to last-minute pit decisions. At the end of the pit lane, you have a much cleaner launch out, but there is less time for the driver to do any kind of switches or anything as they exit, or to receive information as they go back onto the track. So over the course of a weekend, and honestly over the course of the whole year, there is obviously a lot of practice that has to go on to prepare the pit crews for each of the races. However, there's actually not as much practice as you would expect. There is evidence that says that if you spend too much time practicing, then it actually makes them slower. The reaction time can be slower, it's more monotonous. They do have daily practices though, once the car is built, with dedicated sessions during the race weekend. When they are practicing not during a race weekend, they will have a dummy pit box and an electric dummy car. So it's still not the same as when they are actually at the Grand Prix, but it's better than nothing. And obviously they are wanting to make sure that everybody understands their roles. People will be cross-trained, so they'll be able to do different positions. And by changing it up, they actually find that this is very helpful because they aren't as bored in whatever role they are doing. And they'll often rotate through pit crews, so you won't be seeing the same pit crew week over week anymore. That very much used to be the case, but now they really have adapted this idea of changing it up. They receive significant training though, in the sense of, like, they have physios that will work with them to make sure that everybody is able to maximize their bodies for whatever role it is that they are doing. Also, thinking about the practice that takes place over the course of the weekend, they will often practice for like qualifying pit stops as well, where you have to consider the fact that half the team might not be available to do a pit stop. Obviously, they aren't done usually in as quick of a time period, but there is still a pretty quick turnaround time. And then in addition to that, they actually practice significantly less whenever it is extremely hot outside. Again, just going back to the idea of there should be a good balance of them being able to practice but not having any sense of fatigue or over monotony, because they really need to be able to have those bursts of energy during the race itself. We will usually see that the best teams on the grid will have the fastest pit stops, and that is really not just because they have the best people or whatever, the most talented mechanics in the world, although I'm sure they are very talented, but it's also just to do with infrastructure and optimization, and a lot of money and research will go into the development of trying to figure out how to make these pit stops absolutely perfect. So some of the things that they will invest in include laser markers for positioning. Obviously, this is still kind of dependent on the driver, because if the driver doesn't line up in the right spot, then lasers are not going to really help you very much. There are going to be specialized tools. We talked a little bit about the wheel guns, but there's going to be backups and spares, and the wheel guns are just one small part of it. I mean, there's the jacks as well. There are the tools that they use to change the front wing, and if they ever need to change the rear wing, they have to have all of those on hand and ready to go. Most of the teams get their rail guns actually from the same supplier, from a company called Dino Paoli, and every gun itself can cost anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000, so they are not cheap. We did talk a little bit about physios. There's also going to be medical staff available, ready to help in an emergency. And of course you have analysts reviewing frame by frame, because even just tenths of a second will matter in this situation. And so when we look at the teams as a whole, we've talked a little bit about the cost cap in the past, and this really comes into play with this, because if you spend your money to do a quicker pit stop, that's money that you're not now putting into, say, improving your aerodynamic design. It's always going to be a trade-off with something like that, and you have to figure out which one you think will help you to go faster at the end of the day. Despite all of the planning and practice and everything, things can totally change over the course of a race. We always have those contingency planning, those plans A, plan B, plan C. It could change in a moment. They could get a puncture and need to come in right away, and teams need to be able to prepare very, very quickly in situations like that. Ideally, the crew will have warning and preparation time, but a good crew will be able to react without necessarily even having somebody tell them to react. So for example, if they know that a safety car will result in a pit stop and everybody is on the same page about that, then they don't need to wait until the safety car is called and then the pit wall says, now's the time you need to go get ready. They can already be on their way out there, out the door, waiting for that car whenever it comes in, to make sure that they are ready and waiting. And stops can come very quickly in those kinds of situations, and as the team knows how they should react if something happens, then that is going to be the best planning that they can do. So we can't forget about the biggest player when it comes to a pit stop, and that is definitely still the driver. They have to stop precisely on those box marks, and even the slightest misplacement, as we said, can change the whole choreography. They also obviously are going to be the ones communicating with the pit wall, letting them know what they feel in the car and how that can kind of relate to the data that the pit wall is seeing, so that they can make the right decision when it comes to the changes that need to be made during the pit stop. So pit stops are a system. It's people, roles, tools, data, rules, and hours of practice, but not too much practice. And the best ones look effortless because it's a dance. The effort is hidden. So at the next race, pick a person to watch the front jack or one gunner or the release decision, and you'll see these layers that are happening in these 2 seconds of the race. And if you guys enjoyed the episode, then as I said before, make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at GridGirlsFormula, and I'll see you next time. Bye!